Hello there, this is Nightline and I'm Muhammed, Hamdan, and here are the top stories. Explosions rock Tehran as Iran asks Malaysia to convey its stance to Muslim nations. And 2024 STPM examination results marks historic achievement with national CGPA reaching record high of 2.85. Good morning. We begin Nightline with this story. Iran has asked Malaysia to convey Tehran's stance to other Muslim nations, urging them not to be swayed by biased narratives and to understand the real context of Iran's retaliatory actions. In a social media post on Tuesday evening, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, in his request, outlined Tehran's conditions for peace amid the escalating conflict in a phone call with him. Masoud told Anwar that Iran is ready to halt military action against Israel if attacks on its own and the Palestinian territory stop. He added that Tehran would respond positively to peace if its sovereignty and that of Palestine were respected. Anwar, in the meantime, reiterated Malaysia's strong condemnation of Israeli strikes on Gaza and Iran, which have killed civilians, military commanders and scientists. The Prime Minister said the attacks went beyond humanitarian norms and international legal standards. Anwar also stressed that Malaysia recognizes Iran's right to defend itself, adding that it would be hypocritical for the world to support Israel's military actions while denying Iran the same right. Now, explosions rang out in Iran from Israeli airstrikes on Tuesday. The judiciary news outlet Mizan reported that 2 explosions were heard in the capital, Tehran. The strikes took place minutes after US President Donald Trump said Israel had called off its attack in response to his command. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office acknowledged that Israel had struck a radar site near Tehran in what it said was retaliation for Iranian missiles fired 3.5 hours after the ceasefire had been due to begin. However, it said that Israel decided to halt further attacks after a call between Netanyahu and Trump, though it's unclear if the radar site strike happened before or after the conversation. Meanwhile, Iranian media reported that President Masoud Pezeshkian said Iran will respect the truce with Israel as long as Israel does. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump accused both Israel and Iran of violating a ceasefire on Tuesday, hours after he announced it, expressing particular frustration with Israel, which had announced plans for major new strikes on Tehran. Trump urged Israel, quote-unquote, not to drop those bombs, warning that doing so would be a major violation. He also told reporters that he was not happy with either side for violating the truce. His remarks came after Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz ordered the military to mount new strikes on targets in Tehran in response to what he said were Iranian missiles fired in a blatant violation of the ceasefire. Earlier, Israel had agreed to the truce proposal announced by Trump overnight, who said the ceasefire would mark an official end to the war. In a unified show of Arab solidarity, several Gulf and regional nations strongly condemned Iran's missile strike on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, denouncing it as a flagrant violation of international law, regional sovereignty, and the principles of good neighborliness. Saudi Arabia led the regional response, with the Foreign Affairs Ministry issuing a sharply worded statement condemning the strike as an unjustifiable and unacceptable act that violated international norms. Qatar, however, said relations with Iran have been scarred by the missile volley, but expressed hope ties would eventually come back to normal. Its Prime Minister Sheikh Muhammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani also hoped the ceasefire would continue as agreed upon and urged both the US and Iran to return to the negotiating table. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian meanwhile expressed regret in a phone call with Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani over the US base attack. Trump's ceasefire announcement came shortly after Iran launched a limited missile attack on a US military base in Qatar in retaliation for the US bombing of its nuclear sites. Explosions were heard in Qatar and missiles were seen over the capital city Doha. The Al Udeid air base was reportedly the only US military base targeted by Iran. Officials, however, confirmed that the base was not impacted as the missiles were intercepted and no subsequent injuries were reported.
Wisma Putra, meanwhile, said it is closely monitoring the situation in Qatar and is prepared to take appropriate measures if necessary. According to the Foreign Ministry, to date, no Malaysians have been affected by recent incidents in Qatar. It said the safety and well-being of Malaysian citizens remains the government's utmost priority. The ministry said updates will be provided through official media channels as necessary, adding that it is maintaining close communication with local authorities as well as registered Malaysians in the country. Moving on, the 2024 Sijil Tinggi Pelajaran Malaysia or STPM examination recorded a national cumulative grade point average CGPA of 2.85, the highest since the current format was introduced. A total of 1,266 candidates achieved a perfect CGPA of 4.0. That's an increase of 150 candidates compared to the previous year.
When announcing the results in Selangor on Tuesday, Malaysian Examinations Council Chairman Professor Datuk Mat Amin Mattaf said 53 candidates obtained straight A's, while 1,228 candidates obtained 4 A's.
Daripada 41,434 orang calon yang hadir, sebanyak 99.97% atau seramai 41,422 calon layak dianugerahkan sijil STPM 2024.
Mat Amin added that all 23 subjects offered recorded a full pass rate over 60%. At the same event, 20 candidates were presented with the STPM 2024 Top Students Award by Education Minister Fadlina Siddiq.
The federal government will retain the massive Duta Enclave land as the Court of Appeal ruled on Tuesday that Semantan Estates in Berhad is not entitled to the land title. The appellate court also dismissed Semantan Estates' appeal to acquire the land and its buildings.
The decision of the three-member bench led by Federal Court Judge Datuk Lee Swee Seng was unanimous. The Court of Appeal, however, remitted the case to the High Court, directing an assessment of compensation within 90 days. Lee ordered that the compensation to be paid by the government should be assessed following the illegal acquisition based on the 1956 market rate with 6% annual interest until full payment. The compensation will also need to be deducted by 1.325 million ringgit, the sum paid by the government in 1956. Separately, High Court Judge Dr. Ahmad Shahrir Muhammad Saleh is presiding over the trial for mean profit, which will resume next month in Kuala Lumpur. Mean profits are earnings an entity receives following wrongful possession of their assets. The disputed land located in the prime Jalan Duta area known as the Duta Enclave houses several government buildings. These include the National Hockey Stadium, Malaysian Institute of Integrity, the National Archives, the Kuala Lumpur Sharia Court, the Inland Revenue Board Building and the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Academy.
A Kuala Lumpur local plan PTKL 2040, which has been delayed since the COVID-19 pandemic, has undergone a major overhaul. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said he will ensure that the plan is inclusive, holistic and aligned with evolving needs.
At the launch of PTKL 2040 on Tuesday, Anwar said it is too often that urban development sidelines the needs of the wider population, with facilities and conveniences catering around more affluent groups. The plan, rebranded from the Kuala Lumpur Draft City Plan 2020, introduces new measures such as redevelopment incentives, flexible plot ratio controls, and revised land use zones to enhance the well-being of the urban community. The Prime Minister noted that the approach must prioritise the majority who are still in the bottom 40 and middle 40 categories.
Pembangunan kota ini sebenarnya pembangunan manusia. Jadi dalam konsep manusiawi ini, kita pastikan supaya ia lebih terangkum atau inklusif. Dia lebih mengambil kira beberapa pemikiran baru seperti digital, AI dan keperluan-keperluan baru termasuk.
Anwar added that public transport and addressing traffic congestion will be given priority under the PTKL 2040. He said as part of the energy transition, new housing developments will be required to incorporate solar energy to a significant extent.
Malaysia recorded an inflation rate of 1.2% in May, and that's the lowest in 51 months. The Department of Statistics Malaysia, or DOSM, said the drop was largely attributed to declining global oil prices. DOSM said Malaysia's inflation trend was in line with inflation recorded in selected countries, namely the Eurozone, South Korea, Indonesia and the Philippines. The mining sector was the main contributor to the decrease, having recorded a nearly 20% decline. The food and beverage group, which makes up 29.8% of the overall index, recorded a slower increase. Other groups that recorded declines included personal care, education, housing, water, electricity, recreation, and alcoholic beverages and tobacco. Khazanah Nasional Berhad and its subsidiary Jelawang Capital on Tuesday announced the selection of the first 5 venture capital or VC firms under the Jelawang Emerging Fund Managers Program and Regional Fund Managers Initiative. The first cohort of fund managers forms part of Khazanah's broader 1 billion ringgit commitment under the Madani Economy Framework to catalyse high-growth entrepreneurship and draw institutional capital into early-stage ventures.
The Emerging Fund Managers Program supports Malaysian fund managers in raising their first, second or third fund with the goal of creating regionally competitive VC fund managers. As for the Regional Fund Managers Initiative, it is aimed at attracting regional and global fund managers who are committed to enriching the local startup ecosystem.
We must build not just infrastructure, but the institutions with the ambition to scale regionally, not just production, but ownership, not just jobs, but capabilities. Jelawang Capital is one part of that answer. Under the broader Gear Up program, 6 GLICs have committed 120 billion ringgit over 5 years.
The selection has been described as a blend of local roots and regional reach, and, most importantly, an alignment of values. 3 Malaysian and 2 regional fund managers are expected to deploy over 200 million ringgit.
Under this partnership, Khazanah via Dana Impact and KWAP via Dana Printis and Dana Pemachu will look to fund companies that are successful in executing their growth strategies, particularly at the later stages of funding. Jelawang Capital, with its 1 billion ringgit allocation under Dana Impact, is our way of carrying the baton forward.
The commitment into these fund managers marks a pivotal step towards catalysing Malaysia's VC ecosystem.
The euro and the yen rose against the dollar on Tuesday after the announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran triggered a sharp drop in oil prices. The euro rose 0.16% to $1.1597 after having reached $1.1632 a couple of weeks ago, its highest level since October 2021. Meanwhile, the dollar fell 0.74% to 145.07 versus the yen. The European Union and Japan rely heavily on imports of oil and liquefied natural gas, while the US is a net exporter. This comes after US President Donald Trump said both Israel and Iran had violated a ceasefire he had announced just hours earlier. Over 100 luxury vehicles seized. The details after this breather.
Karnival Jom Heboh sempena Hari Nanas Malaysia akan ke Johor Bahru untuk warga selatan di Padang B Angsana Johor Bahru Mall 27 hingga 29 Jun ini. Dan jangan lupa meriahkan Hari Nanas Malaysia di booth Lembaga Perindustrian Nanas Malaysia. Ada banyak aktiviti, hadiah, selawat perdana, penampilan selebriti dan jualan lebih 50 produk berasaskan nanas oleh usahawan tempatan. Jom meriahkan Hari Nanas Malaysia. Nanas kita, kebanggaan negara.
Top 5 carta muzik 40 minggu ini.
Thanks for staying with us. The Road Transport Department RTD has seized 101 luxury cars nationwide in an operation dubbed Ops Luxury. In the operation, the vehicles were confiscated for various offences such as not having valid road tax and insurance, displaying number plates from other vehicles and using fake trade plates.
RTD Director General Dr. Eddie Fadli Ramli said the operation aims to strengthen enforcement against luxury vehicles that violate road laws.
Ada yang melebihi setahun. Kita dapati sejak awal 2024 ada kenderaan. Sejak awal 2024 ada kenderaan yang tidak memperbaharui road tax. Jadi ini adalah satu offence ataupun kesalahan yang kita tidak boleh terima.
He explained that the operation was carried out based on intelligence gathered and complaints received from the public. The RTD also did not rule out the possibility of cloned vehicles identified through chassis number discrepancies and the use of false registration plates. The seized vehicles are currently impounded for further investigation under the Road Transport Act and related regulations.
In Selangor, the Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Ministry, or KPDN, has disposed of counterfeit goods worth more than 3.5 million ringgit. The disposal involved more than 65,000 items linked to 64 cases, making it the largest exercise of its kind in the state over the past 5 years.
State KPDN Director Muhammad Zuhairi Madrade said part of the goods were seized from storage facilities and retail premises.
Pelbagai jenis barangan akan dilepaskan hari ini dengan kuantiti yang tertinggi adalah kategori barangan penjagaan diri di bawah Akta Cap Dagangan 2019 berjumlah 41,000 unit. Diikuti dengan barangan kategori aksesori pakaian terdiri daripada beg tangan, dompet, tali pinggang sebanyak 4,000 unit, jam tangan sebanyak 4,370 unit serta baju, kasut, sandal yang keseluruhannya berjumlah 11,900 unit.
He explained that the disposed items included equipment used in the misappropriation of control goods, particularly subsidized diesel, with an estimated value of 250,000 ringgit. Other items disposed of were electronic components, vehicle spare parts, lubricants and telecommunications equipment. The items were linked to 64 cases recorded between January 2024 and May this year, seized after the conclusion of their respective court proceedings.
In Terengganu, a former headmaster was sentenced to 107 years in jail by the Kuala Terengganu Sessions Court for sexually harassing and raping a female student. Judge Muhammad Zakikuddin Zulkifli handed down the sentence to the accused 60-year-old Rosli Abdul Rahman after the defence failed to raise reasonable doubt. Rosli was found guilty of 13 charges, which included verbal harassment, sexual assault and rape of the victim, who was 16 years old and 8 months old when the offences were first committed. The offences were allegedly committed between November 2020 and November 2021 in Kuala Terengganu and Marang. Although the total combined jail time for the charges could have amounted to 107 years, the court ordered the sentences to run concurrently, resulting in a 15-year term. In Perak, the Teluk Intan Magistrates Court has issued an arrest warrant for the owner of the lorry company involved in the crash that killed 9 Federal Reserve Unit or FRU personnel. The warrant was issued after the individual failed to appear in court to face charges on Tuesday.
The court granted the arrest warrant following an application by the Deputy Public Prosecutor and scheduled July 29th for its mention. The company owner was scheduled to appear in court to face charges under the Land Public Transport Act involving a lorry that exceeded the licence weight limit and violated permit conditions. On May 29th, the Land Public Transport Agency revoked the company's operating licence, prohibiting it from operating or providing any services using vehicles licensed under that permit. In the May 13th tragedy, an FRU truck carrying 18 policemen from the Unit 5 base in Sungai Senam was involved in a collision with a lorry carrying stones. The accident claimed the lives of 9 personnel, while 9 others were injured. On May 16th, the lorry driver, 45-year-old Rudi Zulkarnain Madradi, was charged with 9 offences at the Teluk Intan Sessions Court.
In Malacca, a married couple was remanded for 7 days to assist in the investigation into the suspected abuse of their disabled daughter, which allegedly resulted in her death. The remand order was issued by Magistrate Sharda Shina Muhammad Sulaiman at the Ayer Keroh Magistrates Court on Tuesday.
The husband and wife, aged 38 and 36, were remanded until June 30th to facilitate investigations under the Penal Code for murder. Police were alerted to the incident on Monday after receiving a report at 10:15 a.m. following confirmation from the attending doctor at a nearby hospital that the victim had been pronounced dead at 9:45 a.m. According to the doctor, the girl was unconscious when she was brought to the hospital by her stepfather. The victim had a broken leg and bruises on her head and body, which raised suspicion of abuse. The 9-year-old is believed to have been abused at her home in Kota Laksamana.
PSG to face Messi's Inter Miami in round of 16. This and more when we come back.
Ayuh kita gegarkan Johor Bahru dengan konsert Jom Heboh sempena Hari Nenas Malaysia. Saksikan persembahan hebat selebriti tanah air seperti Jacqueline Victor, Nabila Razali, Amir Ukais, Wani Kerry, Azlan Typewriter, Drama Band, Tuju dan Lokabi dan ramai lagi. Dihostkan oleh Ayu Hot FM dan Hanif Miswat yang akan menggamatkan malam konsert kita. Meriahkan konsert Jom Heboh 28 dan 29 Jun ini di Padang B, Angsana Johor Bahru Mall mulai 9 malam. Jom, jom, jom!
Keadilan. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan keadilan? Apa kau percaya dalam dunia ni ada keadilan? Nyawa harus dibayar dengan nyawa. Darah harus dibayar dengan darah. Welcome to the gang, Andra.
Nampaknya kau memang ditakdirkan untuk jadi salah seorang daripada kita orang. Mafia.
Hapuskan anak-anak mafia tu, Hari Wijaya akan turut hancur. Begitu juga dengan Serigala Merah.
Kalau dia pecah lubang kita, dia buka lubang dulu.
Kau nak diduri dalam daging ke apa?
Kalau bukan sebab geng, kau dah lama mampus macam mancing kurap.
Persahabatan semuanya ada di Ejen Ali.
Kita pengen punya lagu cinta yang BPM-nya kencang supaya cinta-cintaannya tuh ugal-ugal.
Saksikan kuasa muzik dan animasi meraihkan seni tanpa sempadan bersama kami Niji dalam Melody Showcase Niji X Agent Ali The Movie 2 Music Tour.
We're back with more news from the foreign front. Israeli forces and drones have killed more than 70 Palestinians, including at least 51 near 8 distribution centers on Tuesday. In Rafah alone, at least 27 aid seekers were gunned down by the Zionist military, while 25 other people were killed and more than 140 injured in an attack on Salah al-Din Street in central Gaza. The killings are the latest in a wave of daily carnage near 8 distribution points established late last month by the Israeli and United States-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which the head of the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees has labelled a death trap. Thailand on Tuesday imposed restrictions on all travellers heading into Cambodia as the two countries remain locked in a bitter border dispute. The ban applies to any vehicle or person trying to cross into Cambodia from checkpoints across several Thai provinces, as well as foreign tourists flying into Siem Reap. However, Thai authorities said exemptions to the latest travel ban may be granted on humanitarian grounds, such as for students or medical patients, at the discretion of officials at the checkpoints. Bilateral relations between the two countries are at their worst in more than a decade after armed clashes along the border in May left one Cambodian soldier dead. Switching to sports now, football, the M League. Kedah Darul Aman FC, KDAFC owner Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar expressed his disappointment after being left single-handedly to find solutions to the club's ongoing financial struggles. His frustration follows the withdrawal of several co-owners and the decision by the Kedah Football Association, KFA, to form a new team, Kedah FA, which will compete alongside KDAFC in the A1 Semi-Pro League.
Daud explained that the club was established under KFA in 2019 with 3 of its board members appointed from the association's leadership. He emphasized that during such a critical period, all stakeholders should have stood together to support and rebuild the team. Instead, KFA opted to form a separate side in the same league, a move Daud described as a betrayal of the strategic partnership formed in 2021, even though it does not violate any regulations. Despite being left to manage the crisis alone, he remains hopeful that KFA will fulfill its responsibility and provide assistance to the club. KFA President Tan Sri Muhammad Sanusi Matnor is expected to unveil the Kedah FA squad in early July.
Still on football, the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, European champions Paris Saint-Germain PSG moved into the knockout stage from Group B with a 2-0 victory over host Seattle Sounders on Monday.
Seattle started brightly, pinning PSG in their own defensive third during the opening minutes, but the MLS side failed to capitalize on a pair of early corner kicks. Despite the early pressure, PSG found the breakthrough in the 35th minute when Vitina's first-time effort from 20 yards, which was heading off target, deflected off Kvicha Kvaratskhelia back and found the net. They doubled their lead on a counter-attack, with Ashraf Hakimi firing home from a Bradley Barcola assist. With the win and Atletico Madrid's 1-0 triumph over Botafogo, PSG topped Group B with 6 points from 3 matches. They will face Group A runners-up Lionel Messi's Inter Miami on Sunday, while Botafogo take on Palmeiras on Saturday.
swimming pool in China, featuring a dazzling mosaic floor that recreates the starry sky from a Vincent van Gogh masterpiece. With that, I'm Muhammed and Hamdan. Thanks for watching and stay safe.